All right, let's start with the news that has everyone saying, wait, who? Mike Johnson has been re-elected as Speaker of the House, with the GOP holding the slimmest of margins. Johnson's walking a political tightrope thinner than his resume before he landed the gig.
Exactly. It's like being a captain of a sinking ship, except half of your crew is throwing buckets of water back in. This guy has the balance, the Freedom Caucus on one side and a few remaining moderates on the other. It's the political Cirque du Soleil.
Mike Johnson is like that substitute teacher who insists on being called Mr. Johnson while the class doodles dicks on the whiteboard. He's technically in charge, but nobody really cares. Honestly, how do you re-elect someone most Americans can't even pick out of a lineup?
Right? This guy's claim to fortune is being the human embodiment of white bread. Bland, uninspiring, and a little stale. But hey, he's got the unified GOP behind him, which is just code for, we didn't want another 15-round cage match on C-SPAN.
Yeah, after the first round looked destined to fail, Trump got on the horn and talked to Ralph Norman and Keith Self into flipping their votes to Johnson. So the Republicans are united for now. Give it a week, and Marjorie Taylor Greene will probably accuse him of being part of the deep state, despite calling Mama MAGA on the chamber floor when it looked like the vote might fail. Honestly, this speaker situation feels less like a victory and more like a Band-Aid on a bullet wound.
And what's Johnson's big plan? Oh, that's right. More culture wars. Less governing. Fantastic. Just what the American people ordered. Chaos served on a platter of incompetence. I can't wait to see how this one turns out.
And with former chaos agents like George Santos and Matt Gaetz out of the picture, you'd think his job got easier. Nope. He's still got the herd of cats left behind. Good luck convincing them to agree on anything other than what's for lunch.
Yeah, Johnson's pitch is basically, hey, I'm here to keep the government running. Maybe? Let's see how long that lasts before someone accuses him of being a lizard person. Can't wait for that circus to hit the road.
And now we're thrilled to have Sohali Vaddula with us. She is currently National Director of Communications and also running for Vice President of the College Democrats of America, and here to talk about her vision for the organization. Sohali, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me.
All right, well, let's get at it. The College Democrats are a huge platform for mobilizing young voters and shaping future leaders. You've got a big job ahead of you if you're elected. So let's dive into some of the questions. So you're running for vice president of the College Democrats at a time when youth voter turnout is under a microscope. What's your plan to make sure young people don't just vote, but stay engaged year round?
Yeah, we've got a lot of exciting plans lined up. If I'm elected vice president, something I want to prioritize is rebuilding and rejuvenating the College Democrats' relationship with the Democratic National Committee and making sure that youth have a seat at the table and that young party leaders are being listened to and working in tandem with their county party and state parties to ensure that youth organizing isn't something that just comes around every 4 years, but it is something that is year-round prioritized, just like the GOP and Republicans are doing with Turning Point USA and investing lots and lots of money into college Republicans, like the RNC is doing. So we need to be better than them at their own game if we want to win and keep youth organized in the Democratic Party for 2026 and 2028.
So kind of just a quick follow-up on that, and this one, you said that you kind of want to maybe mend a little bit with college Democrats in the DNC. Do you feel like, and you said, not just listen to the youth voter every 4 years, do you feel like there's been kind of a gap in that communication? Is it something that they're not speaking to you? Is that they're not listening? Do you have just a way that you might do that?
I think it all really comes down to representation. And at the end of the day, there aren't that many young people in the halls of Congress, inside the Democratic National Committee, or in the White House. And I think that really starts with, honestly, college Dems, because we are the future leaders of the party. Many of us are going to run for office someday, are going to become staffers on Capitol Hill, and we need to be empowered to do all of those things. And I think in the past and even now, there still is somewhat of a culture of ageism in the party in which young leaders are not as taken seriously, right? But I think that's slowly starting to change with people like Maxwell Frost and Anderson Clayton really taking in the reins and giving young people a voice. And so I hope to build on that momentum and continue that, because I think it's more important now than ever that we get that voice and that we are listened to, because when we're not, I think we just saw what happened. We lost 10 points of the youth vote from 2020.
That's a solid point. And I think one of the things that you talked about was, making sure that we're rolling back in and keeping the party youthful. Do you have any insights on who you think the best DNC, we're getting ready to elect a new DNC chair. Do you have any insights on any of these candidates, and who do you think is best?
That's a great question. So to me, the people that stand out are actually the state party chairs running, both Ken Martin and Ben Wickler. I think state party chairs have a unique set of experience and skills that really makes them qualify for this role, because the DNC chair is essentially an organizer, right? That's what we have to do. We have to raise money. The DNC has to pick the candidates that are most likely to win and also support them. And Ben Wickler and Ken Martin have done amazing work in both Minnesota and Wisconsin in ensuring that races are being won and figuring out what their constituents want and recruiting candidates for different offices at all levels, making sure that they have the support they need from their state parties. And they're also fantastic fundraisers. And the best part is they've done a lot for youth. In Wisconsin, Ben has done a lot with the Wisconsin College Democrats and the high school Democrats. And Ken Martin has done the same. He's given youth a seat at the table. He's ensured that young people have a seat on the state Democratic Executive Committee in Minnesota. And so I'm really looking at these two to see who can change the future of our party and also give youth a seat at the table.
Yeah, that's great, because Adam and I are both real big Ben Wickler fans. We're definitely on board with that, because he seems like he's got the energy. He knows how to win, which is vital to the party right now. So that's great to hear. So next question. The college Democrats have tackled some pretty big issues lately, from reproductive rights to climate action. What causes are kind of closest to your heart, and how do you plan to prioritize them if you're elected?
Yeah, I think the ones that stand out to me are obviously like gun violence, climate change, reproductive rights, mostly because these are issues that directly affect Gen Z and most college students right now. Not to mention student debt is a huge issue, and the rising cost of living and higher education. In terms of prioritizing, I think we don't really like just pick and choose. I think we take multiple at a time, right? Yeah. So like whenever there's current events going on, we'll do lobbying for specific bills in Congress. And that's what we'll continue to be doing. I know a lot of our members have been doing stuff for the ERA recently, and we'll be doing more when it comes to the next session. Congress starts again. So yeah, but I think for the most part, we really just prioritized the issues that matter most to youth. And most of them happen to be like domestic and climate change, reproductive rights centered.
Yeah,
That's
so
great.
You brought up gun violence, which is it's an interesting one to me, because it's such obviously a vital issue, particularly for young voters. When you're talking about not feeling safe when you go to school, or not feeling safe out basically anywhere anymore. And we've just had another obvious string of some gun violence in the United States. But the most frustrating thing, I think, for myself and most people who are advocates of gun violence, is it feels like it only has momentum when something like this happens. And do you feel we could be doing a better job of making this message, sort of constant year round, whether there's, high profile strings of gun violence or anything? How do we make this issue something that sticks and not just when something happens?
It's a great question. I think we do that by making sure that we are advocating year round, right? And I think some people are doing a great job at that. March for Our Lives has done really great work with lobbying, with advocacy year round, regardless of whether or not what's going on currently. And we partner with them often. Same with Students Demand Action. There are people who are doing this work year round. And I think that's something that college Democrats want to always be a part of. Something we prioritize is doing partnerships with other organizations, because we know we can't do it all. We can't do everything. So we'll partner with like the Young Feminist Party for like rallying with the ERA or like abortion rights. And we'll do stuff with Sunrise Movement for climate change. We realize that like we are just one entity, and that we have to be part of a bigger, broader coalition to ensure that the fight for whatever it is, such as gun violence or reproductive rights, always is in play, and that we are always part of it.
So I want to shift gears just kind of slightly. One of the big movements that we've been seeing kind of up and coming that nobody really kind of took seriously until recently, at least from my perspective, is the like Charlie Kirk's, TP USA or something like that?
Turning Point.
Turning Point. So how does it that, a lot of people have commented that we just don't have that same type of organization for the Democrats. Are y'all looking to, as the college Democrats, to try to rival that as an organization, or is it that you're trying to be something different?
I think that there are a lot of parallels that can be drawn from the College Democrats and TPUSA. I think where we differ, though, is that College Democrats are largely organizers. We hold voter registration drives on our campuses. We mobilize college campuses and communities to vote, to get out the vote during election seasons. We canvass, we partner with local campaigns, we partner with state and county parties to make sure that we're doing the work that needs to be done to mobilize. College students are some of the biggest, largest voting blocks in the country, and also the biggest groups of people that are able to work on campaigns as volunteers, that are unpaid volunteers. And so there's a lot of scope here for us to really do some important work. I think where TPUSA differs, though, is that they're more focused on the cultural war and not necessarily mobilization. So if you actually look at the numbers, I don't think it's necessarily that people on the right, young people on the right, are turning out to vote. It's just that we aren't turning out to vote. Because at the end of the day, like, I think it's true that there are more young people that are Democrats than Republicans. But we just lost them because not enough of them showed up to vote. And that's on us because we didn't give them a good enough reason to go to the polls and show up to vote. So that's what College Democrats are being focused on, shifting the direction of the party, but also realizing that we have work to do in mobilizing within our own communities.
So kind of building on that, the Democratic Party has struggled to connect with young voters. So what do you think is the one specific thing that we're getting wrong, and how can College Democrats help fix that?
I think the biggest thing is authenticity. I think Gen Z and even millennials can really just sniff out any small whiff of, inauthenticity or like BS. And so we really have to start getting our messaging straight. And that starts with not only just our words, but also our actions. I do think that actions speak louder than words. It's one thing for Democrats to say, we'll stand up for the working class, but it's another thing for them to actually do it. Saying that you care about climate change is great, but where is the policy to back that up? So I think we really need to start doing what people actually want to see. And that starts with being more authentic and also listening more than talking. And so hearing to what people actually want to see, reconnecting with people that have been forgotten from the electorate, like rural communities, low propensity voters, young voters. And so I think really it comes back down to authenticity.
So our next question, or my next question, I guess, is, so College Democrats have a strong reputation for advocacy, right? But what's one new initiative or approach you'd like to see, maybe prioritized or put on the table for the first time if you're elected?
Something that me and my colleagues at College Democrats are trying to work on is that we do need more youth representation. And that starts with actually giving us more than just a seat at the table, but allowing us to be put in positions of power. And so what we are working on is trying to get more youth appointed, not just to the DNC Youth Council, but also in other positions of power. So like to standing committees, or to have more young people represented in the at-large seat DNC appointments that the chair gets to make following the election. We're hoping that 20% of those seats will go to people under the age of 35, which is a huge step in the right direction for the party. Mm-hmm. And so this is an initiative we're trying to push forward.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's very, very important because, like you said earlier, the youth is the future of the party. They're the ones that are going to be leading things going forward. They need more than just a seat at the table. They need accurate or correct representation all throughout the party to be able to get the message out and speak to that youth vote that we've been kind of losing. So, now, before Adam goes on, let's get personal for a second. And what inspired you to really get involved in politics? And how has that kind of shaped your leadership style? Obviously, you're a very talented, very well-spoken and very knowledgeable person. So, you're the kind of person that we need as sort of the face of the younger generation of Democrats. So, how did you get to the point that where you are right now?
I think it was a little series of events that led up to this moment, but I think the biggest turning point for me to get into politics full time was doing speech and debate in high school. That's just kind of how I knew, because I was debating about real world issues all the time and policies like universal healthcare or like universal basic income or like tax brackets in debate rounds. And I realized these are things that have real world implications that can change people's lives and transform them. And I wanted to do it, but in real time. And so I started working in local campaigns in Austin, Texas, where I'm from. And then I joined the High School Democrats of America, and now I'm in the College Democrats of America. And logically, I'm sure I'll be in the Young Democrats when I'm no longer in college. So, yeah.
All right. So I used to be a boxer back in the day. I never did anything professional, but one of the things I really enjoyed was having a walkout song, right? Like I always would talk about, if I went professional, like what, would my walkout song be? So if your campaign was a playlist, what song would be your anthem? And please tell me it's not Fight Song.
I just thought of that actually. It's a good question. I'm trying to think. Maybe I Ain't Worried by One Republic.
That would be better than Fight Song, even though it seemed like you were kind of leaning in that direction. So one thing that we saw in this past election was, there was kind of a split on the left between, more progressives and more moderates. So I guess, how do we address that? How do we address the challenge of bridging the gap between progressive and moderate members within the organization to try to bring everybody together instead of having this constant, infighting within the party?
This is something I think about a lot. And I think the answer is that there's actually not too much differences between these two groups. It's just a lot of it has to do with media, narratives, and just plain politics. But at the end of the day, I think we have a lot more in common than we realize. And where we disagree really comes down to how to fix the same problems that we all recognize and see, right? Like the border, I think everyone realizes there is an issue with the border, but no one can agree on how to solve it. And so I think it requires a lot of conversations and a lot of openness, transparency, and reflection as to what have we been doing so far and what has been working and what has not been working. And I think that's where it really starts from, having these really difficult, tough conversations, whether it's in the DNC, whether it's in the halls of Congress, whether it's with our neighbors or families, because we have a lot more that unites us than divides us. And so that's what I see.
Yeah. So do you think, and I've talked with a few people about this lately, and we've kind of seen it with sort of the more recent civil war that's going on in MAGA with H-1B visas and a couple other things. And, one of the, and this kind of goes back to maybe when Joe Biden was the candidate in 2020 versus Donald Trump. It's easy to be united when you've got to point at something and say, "Hey, that's bad." Like, right, when you're running for office and somebody else is the incumbent, you can point at that, and it's easy to be united and say, "Hey, that's bad." But when it comes to actually governing, when it comes to actually, coming up with a policy or something like that, that's when things start to fracture a little bit. That's when people start to split on sort of how to handle the issues. Is that something that you see as well out there? Is that something that, like, okay, if the Democrats are in power and, you scrutinize every little policy, the way we left the Middle East, the way we handled the border, the way we handled inflation, all this stuff, if all Trump had to do was point at that and be like, "Hey, that was bad. They did that wrong." And everybody's like, "Yeah, exactly. We need somebody new in there." Is that something that you see out there, especially with youth voters?
I definitely do think that Democrats hold their incumbents and leaders to a higher standard. And that's something I'm proud of. I think that's something we should continue to do because I think it strengthens our party. And I think it also can move the needle, right? If we didn't have these progressive voices, I don't think we would have gotten the child tax credits and like the IRA or like things like that, which are important. And I think, the party still realizes like what is best for the country. And I think even progressives were able to unite behind Kamala Harris because they realized like she was the better option, right? Mm-hmm. And even in times of disagreement, I think there are even Republicans that have shifted towards Kamala Harris because they realize that is what needs to happen for the better of the country. And so, yes, it does happen. I do think that there is this kind of infighting and we do point fingers more. But I think it makes our party stronger. And I think when we need to unite, we have done that. And I don't think you can really say the same for the Republicans because, I don't think that they are, I have a very good feeling that when Trump is no longer here, it's going to look very differently.
Yeah.
So who do you think is the better hype person for the Democratic Party, Obama or AOC?
Right now, I feel like it's AOC because she's just in the game and she's at the forefront of leading this change, right? She's also super young and she's been a champion for the priorities of youth values.
Yeah, I 100% agree with that. Obama on the trail was good. He was definitely some value to have there, and I think people still have some nostalgia for him. But the party now is just so much different from the party back when he was running and he was the candidate. And it's a bummer to see AOC getting beat out by Jerry Connolly for ranking member of oversight. I figured that would be a a big signal to the party was moving in a younger direction. But obviously, she's not done. She's got a long way to go. So hopefully she'll be able to be the future of the party. But lastly, okay, if you had to describe college Democrats in one sentence, how would you do it? It's a tough one.
Yeah, this is a tough one.
You're given one sentence.
We might be young, but we are mighty.
I love that. That's awesome. Actually, one last one, one less high stakes last one. So like I'm 36 years old. Okay. I'm not old, but I'm older. And I don't do a good job of keeping up with music right now. So what are you listening to right now, music wise? What is on your playlist?
I feel like I just finished listening to like all the holiday songs. And so now I'm just kind of in this like, I don't know, like dormant period. But before that, I was listening to Sabrina Carpenter and Gracie Abrams.
Okay. I know Sabrina Carpenter. I don't know Gracie Abrams, so I'll check that out.
Normally I would cut you loose here. I want to make an offer to you. So we do a segment called Fix It in 5, and that was going to actually be coming up. And one of the things we were talking about is student loan debt today. Would you like to join us for that segment real quick, and then we'll cut you loose?
Yeah, sure.
All right. Well, we're going to skip ahead a little bit here to our Fix It in 5, which, as I just talked about, is the student loan crisis. This week's Fix It in 5 is going to be about keeping it real. There's $1.75 trillion in debt, and it's holding people back from buying homes, starting families, or even splurging on guac at Chipotle.
Right. The system's broken. Interest rates are higher than some credit cards. Forgiveness programs are basically Hunger Games for borrowers. Nobody knows what to do and no escape through bankruptcy. It's literally like financial prison for many, many, many people.
So Sohali, we'll have you lead us off. What would you say if you had to give a quick elevator pitch on how to fix the student loan crisis? What would you do?
First things, I think I would make public education more accessible and more affordable, because the trends that we're seeing right now is actually that many people are choosing not to go to college, and they're choosing alternative ways to make their incomes, whether it's influencing or whether it's starting a business, or maybe it's going to trade school or community college. And so I think making community college and also like state schools a lot less expensive will make people want to go there more, rather than going to private schools, which a lot of people are actually choosing not to go. In fact, enrollment at many private universities in the United States in 2024 has dropped to not like an all-time low, but definitely it is on the decline. And I think in the next 10 years or so, we can see that declining further. I think the peak of college enrollment has definitely passed, and we are probably not returning to that anytime soon. So making it more affordable, I think, is key here. And yeah.
What about you, Ian?
Yeah, I mean, I'm definitely that 100% there. I mean, this is a complex issue because you've got a lot of things going on with people who have already gone to college and are suffering through student loans currently. How do we make their life a little bit easier? Do we cap interest rates? Do we bring interest rates down to zero? We've obviously had quite a bit of forgiveness under the Biden administration for a lot of people. I personally know a couple people who were, went to some of those for-profit law schools and got their student loans forgiven entirely and paid back what they had already paid, which is a great step in the right direction. But I definitely think capping interest rates is a big one, and I'm a huge proponent. To me, it has to be 3% or less, and I'm a huge proponent of 0%. Let these people get those loans paid back, especially the people, there's people that have been suffering, paying for, multiple decades at a time and barely made a dent in their student loans. So that's a big one for me, and that's something that I think, it's hard to argue that from the other side, right? You could message that to the point where you say, hey, we're still paying back our debts. We're still paying what is owed. It's just we're not dying under the weight of interest, right?
That's right. I think we need interest rates cheaper than my Spotify monthly fee, because my student loans, I got my degree just a couple years back, and it's that just seems like no matter how much you make that payment, if you always make that minimum payment, it's never going away.
Nope.
So we need to definitely fix at least the cap, the interest rates. I think it needs to be a a wider program in just general. Having it where we also offer apprenticeship programs and stuff that are working out. One of the things that we did here in Wake Forest was we had a program in school that had a connection with already some companies in the area that needed programmers. And so what they did is they got to train for free at this program through the town, and then they were hired, and we ended up getting a portion of their salary back for a certain amount of time to be able to help pay for the program and keep it where we can train other people. So doing programs like that throughout the community and throughout the United States could help really ease the burdens there as well. Do you have anything final to add, Sohali?
Yeah, I think I'll say that like this is an important issue that Democrats and Republicans should be focusing on because a lot of young people care about this issue a lot. It's probably like in their top 3 because this is really what gets in the way of them being able to live a very like decent life and be able to afford things they need to do. It's a big burden on a lot of my peers actually. So it's important. I hope that Democrats and Republicans will focus on this because it does need to be fixed.
Well, thank you for joining us so much. Your energy and passion are what you're doing is inspiring, and we do wish you luck on your campaign.
And if you win, we'll be expecting a shout out when you accept the VP title. Is that a fair deal?
Sounds great.
Awesome. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me.
All right, time for top tweets. First up, Washpo hits us with this gem. Return to work mandates are an invisible pay cut. Like, thanks for pointing out that we already knew. Commuting is just unpaid overtime.
It's wild. They're like, sure, we gave you 2 years to work in sweatpants, but now we want you back in the office to suffer in fluorescent lighting and eat sad desk salads. Hard fucking pass.
I've never had the luxury of being able to work from home. I would love it because, I've had where I remember I got COVID one time and I had to, I felt okay, but I was not, if you had a negative COVID test, this was back when we first did it, you had to like sit out for 2 weeks. And so I worked from home for that 2-week period. And I felt like I was always under the gun that I needed to justify that I was doing stuff. So I got so much more done. And I didn't also have to worry about going into the office. So it was really enjoyable. And I'd like that option in the future.
I've never had that option either. I work in manufacturing, and I'm very hands-on as a business owner. I like to be there. I like to see things. I had some time off when my daughter was born 3 years ago, and I was the same way. I wasn't helping my wife do whatever she needed while taking care of the kid. I was working and trying to be productive, and I was maybe hyper micromanaging because I wasn't sitting right there doing it. But my wife has worked from home since she moved from Florida to North Carolina, and she's extremely productive. And she has, one of the cool things is you do have the benefit of like changing your scenery, right? Like if you're sitting at home and working and you're just like, I'm tired of being here, I don't want to go down the road to a coffee shop and work there. There's a bunch of different places you can go, but forcing people to do a daily commute for a job that does not need to be done on site it's a pay cut. That's exactly what it is. That costs them money to be able to go back and forth, not to mention all the other impacts that it has with traffic and more cars on the road because people don't fucking carpool. They all take their own cars or
take public transportation if they have it.
It's really just, it doesn't make sense for jobs that don't need to be done on site. Like I said, I'm in manufacturing, so it just doesn't make sense.
All right. Next up, we got judge in Trump's hush money case saying there will be no punishment at sentencing. Honestly, if you're not going to punish him, just give him a get out of jail free card and call it Monopoly MAGA edition.
Yeah, but even in Monopoly, there's at least a chance you have to pay a fine. With Trump, it's like a dice roll in his favor, always in his favor. The guy's out here treating the legal system like it's his personal PR campaign.
It's really frustrating that we're supposed to be a country that's founded on that no person is above the law, and everything tells me that you can basically commit any crime you want felonies after felonies, and all you gotta do is run for president, and it suddenly all of a sudden stops the justice system. It makes no sense to me. I understand that while he may not be a traditional person, we don't have kings in this country. We fought a war in 1776 over that.
Yeah, I mean, it's my opinion on this whole process and all of his legal woes that he's had is he should receive punishment that is in line for the crime that he committed. No greater or no less than somebody else would be punished for the same, for the same thing. And it always comes down to, for me at least, like he shouldn't, just for being president or just for being wealthy, he shouldn't get preferential treatment in the legal system. And then you start talking about, well, this is a hush money case, right? So it's not like, poor or middle class people are paying hush money, right? So it's always rich people, and they most of the time kind of get off more or less scot free, and except in certain circumstances. So it's just a shitty system. It just shows, like you said, if you're high profile enough, like possibly elected president of the United States or worth enough money, that the law just doesn't seem to apply to you.
Yep. All right, next up, Trump's economic wisdom in treat form here. Tariffs and tariffs alone created this vast wealth for our country. Sure, let's tax our way to prosperity. It worked so well for the Great Depression, right?
It's peak Trump economics. Ignore the experts, crank up the slogans. Maybe next week he'll suggest we print more money to make America wealthy again. Mawa.
Yeah, the idea that he has this little chart that shows that, we used to fund most of our, pay most of our debt through tariffs and fund our country through tariffs. It's just asinine. I mean, that wouldn't even fund probably a tenth of our military budget. We're going to have to, I think I saw something, we would have to crank, the average tariff up like 300% if we wanted to even come close to paying our budget. Yeah,
and he's the world's changed, right? Even if there was a time in our country's history in which tariffs did pay for a considerable portion of our spending, times have changed. The economy is far more global than it was, and he's talking about taxing literally 45% of imports and exports from the United States. These countries aren't just going to eat that. They're not just going to be like, okay, yeah, fine, you guys do what you want. They're going to retaliate, and it's just, it just makes no fucking sense. And I can't believe we're still having a tariff conversation at this point. I mean, it's amazing.
I mean, these are things that Teddy Roosevelt ran on.
Right. It's 2024, and we're still talking about this shit.
All right. And finally, this one from Cremo, I think is how you pronounce their name. In 2006, pseudoephedrine-based nasal decongestants were pulled from shelves because people were making meth. So manufacturers switched to phenylphrine. 2 months ago, the FDA said that it doesn't even work, but people still take it. It's like the medicine's version of placebo participation trophy.
This explains so much. I thought it was just me when I take it and I'd still feel like a walking allergy attack. Shout out to Big Pharma for wasting everyone's time and money.
Yeah, if you can't tell, the last episode, I was really just starting to get sick. I'm just now getting over it. I went to CVS one night and was like dying, just wanted to breathe. So I went to go look and see the medicines they had, and then I started reading some of the reviews. I found this tweet is kind of how I ended up on it. Just surprising that I was not able to get any relief that night because it was past the time that you have to go and actually now hand a little slip of paper to the pharmacist. And if the pharmacist isn't there, you don't get over-the-counter drugs that work. Like, what the hell are we doing here?
Yeah. I mean, and I will say, as a cautionary tale, beware of taking Afrin for too long. When they say do not take it more than 3 days, do not take it more than 3 days. I actually got addicted to it and had to go on a steroid to get to where I didn't need it anymore.
That's wild. I've never heard of that.
It's crazy.
Well, now I got a burning question on my mind for you. I know it's something that is on a lot of ours too. I saw a tweet that you said that you're gearing up to run a marathon, right?
Yeah.
I normally run about, when I'm not sick as a dog, I run 4 miles a day through the week, and I run 6 on the weekends.
Okay.
What shoes are you wearing? Because man, my even doing that, and granted, you and I have different builds. Let's just be honest.
Yeah.
I have runner's knee.
Okay.
And it's horrible. I have plantar fasciitis, and my calves are about as big as most people's quads.
Yep.
So they're always feeling like they're constantly about to rip off my my bone.
Yeah.
When I run a lot. So what shoes are you wearing that give you comfort?
So I am a big proponent, and I've told people this, that who are also runners, and some agree, some don't. Shoes are such a subjective thing, and people, I mean, it's got to be the right fit, right? But I have told people all the time, I'm a huge proponent of basically any carbon plate shoe. So any shoe that has a carbon plate in the bottom. So I run in Nike Alpha Flies, I run in Nike Vapor Flies, and I've got some New Balance Fuel Cells that all have the carbon plate in the bottom. They're very bouncy. They're very comfortable. For me, they're very comfortable. They give you a nice cushion. They're fast. The Alpha Flies are my race day shoes, and the New Balances are my those are my like daily drivers, basically.
Yeah, I wear a New Balance 1080. The Fresh Foams, they are, man, they're way too daggone expensive, but they're about the only thing that I can wear that my feet just don't feel like they're about to fall off when I'm done. The runner's knee, I'm still, I don't know if that's really any shoe's going to help that. I try to wear a brace and get through it, but man, I wish I could do long distances, but then again, no, I don't, because I absolutely hate running. I just do it because I have to. Like the first mile, my brain is just like,
this is terrible.
This is the worst thing that you've ever done to me. Will you just stop? Mm-hmm. And it doesn't help that like my running pass. So like I go out around my house. I live in downtown Wake Forest, so I'm lucky enough to have walkable neighborhoods. But within like the first quarter mile, it's literally probably a 10-degree incline, 8 to 10-degree incline, just straight up for 4 blocks.
Yeah.
And doing that in the first mile is insanity, but I don't really have, I want to run in neighborhoods. I don't have that option.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's like, so the other, yesterday I ran up to a brewery and met my wife up there, and it's about 3 miles away. It's not anything terrible, but I ran a half marathon back in November. And then yesterday I ran that, and it was like a 450-foot elevation gain, the path that I went through. And I was like, I'm dying. This is crazy. And it was the same thing. It's like right out of the gate, I'm straight up a hill.
Yeah. And then also I don't run in the cold. Like that cold lung feeling for me is just brutal.
Yeah.
Can't do it.
Yeah. So I have to do like one of those neck gaiters that I pull up over my face. And then like once I start to get warm, I'll pop it down so I can like breathe a little bit better. But yeah, the cold, it's brutal.
All right. Well, let's move into our Jackass of the Week. This week's award is going to go to Elon Musk, because openly supporting far-right German party and using alt accounts to compliment himself, Elon's given us villain origin story vibe.
Honestly, this guy's richer than God, but acts like a middle schooler fishing for compliments on Instagram. Imagine having billions and choosing to be this pathetic. Elon, you have really, really earned this one.
I think this one was coming for a while. We've talked about him, I think, on, if not every show. He will probably be a reoccurring occurrence on this show. He's made himself a staple in politics. Now he's going to make the Twitter algorithm make it where, it's all North Korean like about Trump. It sounds like he's saying that he's going to, if you're negative, then it's going to be you're not going to get any reach. And it goes to not only the site, but also it says public figures.
Yeah, so how interesting is that the entire 2024 election, the negativity around Biden was such a huge swinging point. Same with Kamala Harris, such a huge swinging point to get Joe Biden out and Kamala in, and then all the negative tweets about Kamala Harris and the whole platform just being so negative about the incumbency. And now that Trump is in office, he wants to switch the algorithm so that negativity no longer has the reach that it does. It's almost as if he's intentionally pulling the strings.
Let me stop. Can you hear my dog licking himself right now? Because it's loud as shit to me.
Nope.
All right, good. he is just going to
my
town.
Dog was just walking in. I got hardwood floors, and my dog was just walking in and out of here over and over. I was like, get the fuck out of here. He's like, clack, clack, clack.
All right. So, Elon, you are definitely our jackass of the week.
Yeah. Always. Always.
Let's move on. Ian and I, we're from North Carolina. We're really into Panthers. I think it was one of our original bonding topics that we when we first met each other. That we bonded over. Let's have a little discussion about Bryce Young.
Yeah. So, Adam, I'll talk about it a little bit too, but what's your opinion on Bryce Young? So we obviously saw his rookie year was about as bad as a rookie year could possibly go. And then he comes into this season and somehow it looks like things maybe got worse, right? And then Andy Dalton takes over and the offense immediately starts clicking. And, the first game back, he throws for 300 some yards and 3 touchdowns and he puts on a great performance. His performances start to decline and then he gets kind of injured. So Bryce Young comes back in and has since, as far as QBR goes, as far as touchdowns to turnovers and all the stuff that you look at for a quality quarterback, everything's just shot up to the charts to where he, statistically, since he's returned, he's looking like a top 5 quarterback. What do you think here, Adam? What is your opinion?
Man, just looking at it, I will say this, since he's restarted, like, even though I know that we don't have our season's done, we're going into the last game, we don't stand a chance or anything, but I'm at least excited to watch now that I want to see what he can do. Mm-hmm. I see that there's at least hope. He's given us hope that maybe he's turned it around. I mean, he performed very well against some of the best teams in the league. I mean, the Chiefs have one of the best defenses, right. And then also Philadelphia. So
Eagles,
he performed very well, but then he kind of shit the bed against Dallas. So and I know you talk about his footwork all the time with us. So I don't really know how much that matters. I mean, you've called out that Pat Mahomes doesn't have the greatest footwork either. So, I think he's doing the most amount of what they call the big time throws. And he's in the top 11 quarterbacks now, even having been benched in the league. So I'm at least excited for next year, but then again, as a Panthers fan, I think we're always
get excited.
We're always excited, right? Until like that first game hits. So
it's hard to. If it was 2 games, then I could sit there and say, okay, that's an outlier. If it's 3 games, that's an outlier. Once you start getting into 5, 6, 7, 8 games against myriad opponents on both sides, former Super Bowl champions, probably the favorites maybe to win the Super Bowl this year, even with some teams like the Ravens and the Bills out there playing extremely well. It's difficult to bet against Mahomes in the playoffs. He just goes God mode most of the time. But it's hard for me to say anything against that. I talk about Bryce's footwork. It's been bad basically his whole career, all the way back to high school. He has a tendency, and a lot of it probably stems from his height, his stature. He has a tendency to kind of jump when he throws or keep his feet off the ground. That can make it more difficult to control passes. But he's making throws that the best quarterbacks in the NFL make, and he doesn't even have the weapons that some of these other quarterbacks have. Now, Adam Thielen being back, Adam Thielen and Bryce have had a connection. They will continue to have a connection. Those two are just, they're on the same page, right? They know what
we need to sign him again for
we
the
have to
coming year.
have that veteran presence there, and basically Bryce's safety blanket to like what a lot of people have, a lot of historic quarterbacks had in their tight ends. He has that with Adam Thielen.
Yeah, and
Coker came on.
He reminds me of Ricky Prohl a lot.
Exactly. Yeah, Ricky Prohl is a huge. There's a huge comparable comparison to be had there, and Adam Thielen can just make some outrageous catches. We saw that one-hander to set up what should have been, the game winner against, was it Cincinnati?
Yeah.
Before Chuba fumbled. But anyway, you've seen. He's doing it game in and game out, week in and week out. He had a bad game, obviously, and it's his second year. He's still under 30 starts in the NFL. That kind of shit's going to happen. Not a huge deal. I wouldn't look too much into it. He made some good throws in that game. He just had a little bit of trouble with protecting the ball. A couple bad fumbles got in his head, and he started to kind of force things to try to make something happen. So I don't know. Again, I'm cautiously optimistic. I'm proceeding as if, the jury's still out on him. Comes back next year and things kind of deteriorate back towards where he was year one, beginning of this year, then maybe I'm looking at a quarterback next year. But it's nice to be in a position going into this next draft where I don't feel like we need a quarterback right now.
Yeah. And, if anything, I think we've seen through Geno Smith, we've seen through Sam Darnold, even I would say Baker Mayfield, that these guys, they can play bad, but then they just kind of get it one day, right? And I don't know. Do you think that's Dave Canales? He's got association with Baker and now Bryce. Do you think that he's the QB whisperer or whatever?
You've got to give him credit for setting Bryce up to be successful and learning from what he did that he thought was setting Bryce up to be successful that wasn't. So you look back to last year with Frank Reich. They thought that short to intermediate throws, get the ball out quick, all that was going to be the way to make Bryce Young successful. And all that did was have him throw a bunch of screen passes where the receivers would get, stuck at the line of scrimmage or even losses, or the ball would get batted down or whatever. And Canales tried to do that early this year. Where Bryce is successful is driving the ball downfield because of his stature, his going outside or going slants over the middle, a 5 to 7 yard slant. It's harder for him to hit those. You need to drive that ball. And it's the same thing Drew Brees did for the New Orleans Saints for years. Hall of Fame quarterback did this. Drive the ball downfield, and then hit the screen instead of the other way around. Use the deep ball to set up the short passes. And they've done that. They've, that's part of the reason he's making these big time throws is because he's given the opportunity to push the ball downfield and get it to his receivers.
That's a great point. Now a completely unrelated question. What do you think is the most unacceptable, quote unquote, acceptable item to eat for breakfast? Like, is it steak or
most acceptable item? So something that people do that I just like hot take don't agree with for breakfast,
or like that you could eat. Like if you saw somebody eating just like baked beans for breakfast, you're thinking that person's probably a little weird, right?
Maybe, but like it's not baked beans.
I guess the English, I don't know, the English kind of do that, right?
Yeah, but Ireland, they do it. Like, it's actually pretty good. A full Irish breakfast, man, it's really fucking good. I don't know if I like walked in and somebody was eating soup for breakfast, I might be like, yo, what the tomato soup or chicken noodle soup or something like that. I'm like, no, I don't think so. Steak, I have steak and eggs sometimes.
Yeah, right? I eat steak. Yeah.
Not often. I'm gonna say soup. I feel like if I came in and you were just like sitting down, and now that I think about it, tomato soup at breakfast doesn't really sound terrible. But I would be like, that's weird. If you're making soup at breakfast, that's weird.
Or maybe like if you made it gazpacho. I don't know if you ever had.
Oh yeah, like cold tomato soup, basically. Yeah.
There's just I think that might be our winner. There's no way that anybody in their right mind is eating gazpacho for.
No, I could not just like face a gazpacho right in the morning. Like that's no chance. Maybe mid-morning snack, but no.
All right, yeah. Well, that's a wrap for this week's episode. If y'all had fun or just feel smarter than Elon Musk, hit like, rate, and subscribe, please. And don't keep this podcast to yourself. Share it with your friends, and we'll see you next week.
Share it with your friends. See you guys.
See ya.